All right, man, I wish I had your hair. That's I got to start with that. So,
Yeah, it just grows. Um,
yeah, right. Mine used to do that too. But Bennett, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks. Happy to be here
It's
for
great to
sure.
have you here. I love what you're doing, and we'll tell a little story along the way here. Um, Best place to start is if you can tell us who Bennett is, and I usually have to put an asterisk for men on this generally because when I ask who you are, what you're about, they usually go automatically to what they do in their job or business or something, but that's not the question. I'd like to know like where you're from originally, where you are now, what you feel comfortable talking about, family, brothers, sisters, kids, or whatever. Maybe even something you've never told anybody you want to reveal to the world now. That always becomes interesting. And then we can get into the business stuff. How's that?
Yeah, that's fine. That's the fun stuff, you know. So my name's Bennett Wickre. I grew up on an island off the coast of North Carolina, Roanoke Island. Um, yeah, so was just a surfer boy out there on the coast and kind of got sucked into food because I was hungry and wanted to buy more surfboards. And that started this life journey of, being really passionate about pretty much everything that I try to do and, feeding people. Um, so I,
Do you have brothers and sisters that
yeah,
the same?
Yeah, so not really. I have one sister. I grew up on the water, so water was always a big part of, everything that we did. We ate a lot of seafood, engaged with a lot of folks. I love to fish. Fishing is a big passion of mine. I grew up sailing, love to sail, love to be on the water, obviously there. So, and now I live in the mountains pretty far away from big bodies of water and end up fishing in tiny streams. So the joke is, the older I get, the smaller the water gets, the smaller the fish get. Because when I was young, we had the ocean, we'd go way out in the ocean, catch giant fish. Now I like sneak around in the woods on tiny creeks and catch tiny fish, and that's getting back to, what I really love to do, which is explore.
It's got
So
to be pretty relaxing in the I did some of that in the Keys in Florida and it's pretty relaxing going into they both have their pros and cons, but it's pretty relaxing going into the creeks and the small places and where nature is, huh?
yeah, I mean, our mutual friend Chris and I, we have done a lot of exploring into creeks and rivers, and we'll even hook up with climbing harnesses and go into canyons to get even further in to,
Nice.
find the fish.
I hope you
So
tell
yeah,
people where you're going before you go.
yeah. A couple of years ago, my wife got me a satellite messenger so that she can keep track of me and I can communicate with her so that she knows when I'm running late for dinner or for anything.
Where are you?
Yeah,
Type of
it's like
deal.
there's no excuse now to not know where I am as long as I can see the sky partially. She can find
Well,
me.
it could have been worse. She could have implanted something in your neck to know where you were, and
Yeah.
that too.
Yep.
Do you guys have any kids?
Yep. Two kids. They're middle school and elementary school. They're super fun. So,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, enjoy that. Well, then, speaking of kids, then, you gave a little bit of a hint what you were like as a kid. Did you have the entrepreneurial lemonade stand in your thing, or was it mostly the fishing, or what were you up to?
Not at all. It was really fun. I was kind of living it one day at a time. I ended up working in a restaurant where we sourced all of our seafood like the morning of. So I ended up just luckily getting into that space. I don't know, at the time I wouldn't have said luckily, but it kind of started this journey. I was sitting on the bleachers watching my younger sister play softball. She was a really good athlete. And, I was probably still wet from being in the ocean that morning. And one of the other parents was one of the owners of the restaurant and turned around and said, "Hey, I need a warm body tonight. Do you want to make some cash?" And I was like, "You're speaking my language. Let's go." And just walked, I had flip-flops on. I walked right into the restaurant and, board shorts and flip flops, cooked the whole night with them. And they're like, "You want to come back tomorrow?" And I was like, "This is super fun." And so I started, showing up at the restaurant. I never got proper shoes until I, started cooking in college. I still wore flip flops to cook in. Um, and that started my, kind of journey into food, but never in the entrepreneurial space until much, much later. It was really just a means to the end, to an end, to feed myself and then also have kind of a little bit of autonomy in my schedule. I worked really late at night and then I would go fish on the fishing pier until the fishing pier closed, and I would go home and, kind of repeat that cycle over and over again. And my days off, I had an old station wagon that was filled with surfboards. And on my days off, I would go camp. And so like my folks didn't see me most of the summer unless I had to do laundry, but that was kind of the life that I had. I had everything. I would catch fish and I would cook fish, then I would surf and then repeat that cycle um, up until I went away to college. And that's when, I had to actually like get serious about stuff.
Well, I always find it fascinating. That's why I ask. First of all, I love young people and kids, but sometimes things happen for a reason, and sometimes they're very real. What an interest you get, or you get influenced early on, or whatever, and then takes you a certain route. And I don't know if it's by accident. I don't necessarily think it's by accident. I think some of it is how you take advantage of it or see an opportunity and whatnot. But it is kind of fascinating. I could relate to everything you say except the water I was going to when I was younger was ice, and I skated on it at the rink all the time. But the
Yeah.
commonality was you were outside or doing somewhere some all day long until mom or whoever called you in for dinner.
Yeah. And as part of that too, there was a lot of meeting different people. One of the things with it being kind of a tourist location down there in North Carolina, there's always different people from all over. And so, when we were camping, we'd meet people at the campground or we'd, engage with all these different folks. And it was always just really fun to be, around people, understand where they're coming from, why are you here, what makes you tick kind of thing. And that was
Mhm.
always really interesting too. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
I did some fishing out on well in the Keys, but also in the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward
oh
Island,
yeah,
which we had smoked mackerel like fresh. They just smoked it and everything, and I saw somebody catch out in the ocean a little bit of tuna, which with the big rods stuck to
oh
the.
yeah,
Oh my God. Um,
yep,
Crazy stuff. So North Carolina, you went to North Carolina State, right? And you got a
yep,
bachelor's in food science, I
yep.
guess because of everything that you had seen.
No, this is going to be common. It's so random and lucky that I even had like a trajectory into these spaces. I started at NC State in chemistry.
Hmm.
I really, that was my passion. It was chemistry and physics and things like that. And so started in chemistry, worked my way through a ton of chemistry. And, by the eighth chemistry class, my head was kind of spinning. And I was kind of like, well, this is a lot of chemistry. Do I really want to spend my career trying to guess the position of a subatomic particle that might or might not be in a theoretical zone somewhere? And around that same time, my scholarship money was running out.
Hmm.
So I had to pay for school. So I was working full time. I got a job through some chef connections and I started cooking at a restaurant outside of Raleigh at a pretty high level. And so I was like, well, I need to do this job, stay in school. I need to continue down this path. I can't keep up with chemistry right now with the level of work that I have to do just to
Hmm.
cover, day-to-day expenses. Um, so I tried to drop out of college a couple times, and I had an amazing advisor who was like, "Look, man, go try this." I went into like a law path at one point, doing intellectual property studies, and then by like the third time, coming to his office trying to get out from under school and just focus on the chef life. he was like, just do me a favor, go sit in on this food science class. You've got all of these credits. You love food. Go see, just go take this intro to food science. Just go audit it. Um, and I kind of found my space, where I could combine all of these things and maybe have a real job at the end of the day. And that's kind of the one of the defining moments for me was just, having someone who was patient enough to kind of see all of these things and not immediately say you're doing the wrong thing, suck it up, go back to class, go sit there, but try to find the right space for
Yeah.
me to grow as a person.
What they say is you only need one person to believe in you. That can make the difference in the world. And if
Yeah.
just one person, that's enough. And it works. I have a lot of executives I talk with that we have these conversations, and they tell me, man, when I was 9 or 10 years old, the coach put me out on the field or on the ice for like a critical moment of the game. And they don't even remember if they scored or not or whatnot. They just remember, man, he really believed in me to put me out in that one game. And it's similar to what your advisor did. He didn't, like you say, just berate you or whatnot. He said, well, maybe this, give it a shot. You can do it. You got
Yeah.
the stuff, and changes lives sometimes,
Oh, I
just
mean, it's everything. Yeah. I mean, I met my wife in food science. I started my career as a result of those small decisions.
give the guy a prize, man. Go back and give him a
Yeah.
hug.
He's
Um,
long since retired.
oh, yeah.
But yeah, so he's doing what he wants to
Boy, do you
do.
ever see Mr. Holland's Opus, that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there, do a Mr. Holland on him. Our firm, Fifth Element, we launched it based on the premise of it's about talent and leadership and how it's connected to impact and tech as a resource, a tool to make that happen.
Mhm.
It's also about, leaders organizations can always do better when they're doing good. And that's what we believe in, and it keeps growing. I mean, your initial career was with pretty big companies, kind of off what you'd think you'd be in type of thing.
Oh,
Oh, the power went off. This is real life stuff.
yeah. Give me a second. They turn the light off 1 second.
Well, here we
Oh,
are, live from North Carolina.
live from, no, I'm in Oklahoma today.
Oh, no, Oklahoma. Okay, there you go, Oklahoma. Well, I've had electricity turned off in a couple of other
I'm still with you.
conversations I've had, but
Oh,
not in
that's
the
funny.
US.
Yeah. And of course, the switch is all the way on the other side.
Of course.
There you go.
There
We're
you
back.
go. And God said, let there be light. Um,
Yeah, it is. It's Friday afternoon, and so half of the folks here are trying to make their way out.
I got
So,
it. So you were with
yep.
pretty big, company, Unilever, G&T, Nestle, big
Yeah.
companies. I'm assuming you picked up some good training and experience there. What were your thoughts about at that time in those big companies?
Yeah, I mean, that is, where I started. Right out of school, I worked for Unilever. Actually, 2 years before I graduated, they were super cool. They let us come in and do internships. We worked on really like just projects that anyone would work on. Um, and it's an amazing foundation for it can, what you can do when you have, all of these people providing all of these resources, and everything moves really smoothly. With Unilever and Nestle was even more interesting because as a technical person, I came into Nestle as part of the marketing department. I was a technical resource to the marketing team to help them figure out how to best structure the projects that they were working on. So it's really, I wouldn't be where I'm at without having that foundation and
Right.
structure. With G&T, they're a global company. And my role there took me all over the world. I was able to learn and have access to technology and industries that I wouldn't have had the ability to see, which is originally what led me to Nestle. I worked in factories all over the world with G&T, learning how to do stuff, learning with tradespeople, and experts. Just like simple stuff like making candy. I got trained in candy making, trained in ice cream making, trained in baking, all of these things. And it was a crash course every time. And that really opens your eyes to what possibilities are out there if you have access to information. Um, when I was doing a lot of that, I was young and it was nice to be able to travel and do that. But you start to connect these dots that you don't see unless you have exposure to all of these different things. And
Right.
I think that it's clicked for me at that time to open your eyes and compare the thing that you're working on to all of these possibilities around you, and there's probably a solution by combining things. These good ideas and good applications. I use applications a lot because it's all about taking the different ideas that you have access to and applying them in a creative way. And that is really kind of summed up the culmination of experiences that I was lucky enough to have at those bigger companies.
Yeah, it's I went to Deloitte and I didn't want to be an accountant or anything, but it was a great, like you say, maturity, foundation, the whole bit to see big picture. And
Get
I
structure. Yeah.
recommend it to a lot of young people because at that age, you don't really kind of, most people know 100% where you're going. You might have a better idea, but not see, the more you see, the better. And the hope is that maybe AI allows more of it and not less of that to happen. All right.
I'll
We're
turn the
trying
lights off again.
we're trying to save electricity over there, huh?
It's probably the same team.
Does it
That's
automatically
fun.
go off or do they do
N-
that?
No, I think it's people just sweeping the building as they're closing down.
Oh. Um, there you go. Well, were
I'm
there
back.
any, I'm going to ask you a question while you're walking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
This makes for one of the most unique videos I've had. I had this in Ethiopia once when the electricity went off too. Um,
So before you say that, I was going to do this in the aquaponics lab so that there's an aquaponics lab right over here. It's a giant warehouse. It's got all of the lights and the greens that grow, and there's,
oh, nice.
the fish and stuff like that. But I didn't want to have a warehouse behind me for the video, but they definitely wouldn't have turned the lights off over there.
Well, it makes for good conversation. I wanted to ask you though, was there any like experience or inflection point, if you will, that stood out or stands out for you that maybe had, a distinct impact on what your next chapter is that we'll talk
Yeah. Yeah, I remember very vividly. I worked for the Swiss arm of Nestle for a bit on new products, so like all emerging stuff. Um, and I remember getting the project brief, and the timeline for completion was 10 years.
about. Wow.
And so I'm 28 years old. I'm sitting, you know, looking at a project brief that's 10 years out. Um, and I was not ready to work on one project for 10 years.
Sure.
And so I started to look into, faster ways of, getting products into the marketplace and having an impact. And that led me to get into startups. And then once you start seeing that, you can do things quicker. And like we said, go fast, be fast. Before we turn this on, you start realizing that like there's an opportunity here to make an impact, and it doesn't have to take a decade to
Yeah, I
get
love
things
that.
going.
And the fact is, you can see the contrast. If you wouldn't have gone there first to those companies, you might not have seen the contrast that you can do and had the foundation and all that. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
it's actually brilliant. They say the fourth industrial revolution is about AI and technology, pretty clear. But they're also talking that the fifth industrial revolution, if you will, is about humanity. And food was definitely on your mind during this whole thing. And as was leveraging technology, it sounds like, you started with pet brands. And I read some of my notes. You started with pet brands and then different food related businesses from organic meal kits to meals for kids and consulting, really interesting, diverse stuff. How did this impact where you were heading? And Did you know at that point then that where you're heading?
Uh, I don't think I ever really know where I'm heading. I like to think that, you follow an idea and follow a movement that feels right for you. And if you kind of stick to that, it's helpful. I would say not the best career advice, because I left an amazingly stable job to start doing some of these crazier ideas. But the jump from the food side, the human food side with Nestle and Unilever, G&T, to the pet side was to see if I could do it. That team at Big Heart, had just been created. It spun off from Del Monte. It was my first startup, and I wanted to test the idea that things could get done quicker
Hmm.
than we were trained earlier on. When we had 90 days, and there was a team. We sat around a table, we agreed on an idea, and said, "Can we bring this to the market in 90 days or less?" And you work pretty hard, and if you don't, then it's no harm, no foul. The next idea is right there, ready to go. Um, and that was a big challenging moment for me to see if I could do something that I thought was possible.
Did you have a dog at the time?
Two dogs, yeah.
Did you bring home stuff?
Oh yeah, and I commuted into San Francisco on a bicycle. So I would bring home dog food on the bicycle. So it looked really funny when I would catch the ferry with a 40-pound bag of dog food strapped to the front of my bicycle. But you get in good shape doing that. So
Yeah, you certainly do. It reminds me a little bit
uh,
of Rocky, where there's no technology, it's just real left stuff for exercise.
yeah, yeah, that's the gym. Yeah, you're just
Exactly.
bringing home dog food.
And and your dogs were
But it,
waiting and just so happy when you got home.
yeah. But that got me into startups. It got me into shortly after that, I started working in the direct to consumer meal space with
Hmm.
Green Chef and organic meals. And that was another inflection point for me. I did not I didn't realize how lucky I was to have access to really good food growing up. And as you move into this food space, there's a joke that I see a lot between like food scientists and folks in the food industry on the product side. It's you're either a good witch or a bad witch, like in the Wizard of Oz. And not that you're good or bad, it's just what you're working on, right? There's in the food side, there's technology around food that makes it faster, cheaper, more efficient. And then there's the natural food space on the other side. And there's always been a little bit of a barrier there between keeping it natural and also making it safe and making it accessible and getting it to people in a way. And so that's what drew me to the natural food space, especially on the direct to consumer side, because now we're trying to get the closest thing to nature to people in places where they wouldn't have access to food. Trying to do it in the safest way possible with the least amount of trash, more or less, coming to your house. Um, and so that was just the next step for me, and I've been on that natural food and trying to feed people that journey ever
Did
since.
did you also get fed Fruit Loops and Cocoa Puffs by your parents for
Oh
certain?
yeah, Pop Tarts, you know all the great stuff.
And it's not their fault. They didn't know any better, basically.
No, and it's all in moderation too. I think
Right.
eating something that you really enjoy is all well and good. All of those things are great, but like, have a banana, eat some salad, connect with your local food system,
Right.
all
Yeah.
of those great things. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a fair amount of work with the World Food Program, and there's a 100 billion meal challenge we've done that we have Tony Robbins involved in too, and it has to. The whole goal is local food, and not spend money on coloring and spraying and all sorts of stuff, food to travel 4,000 miles somewhere else. It really is Mother Nature knows exactly what she's doing, right?
Yeah. And, if you look back historically into cultures that have survived and thrived, it's that they're eating what's available to them and they're eating a variety.
Well, speaking of cultures, then, and this is the part I love, the most fascinating part actually is, you know, your COO of Tokabi. Is it pronounced Tokabi?
Yep. Tokabe. Yep.
Tokabi, great. I love what you're doing here, and can you share how that happened? What's the vision? What's the mission? Tell
Yeah.
us all about it and why it's so important and how you're scaling it and everything.
Yeah. This is so Tokabe started as a restaurant in Denver 18 years ago this year. And it was the passion project of, Ben Jacobs and Matt Chandra, two buddies that met in college, and Ben's family. Ben's registered member of the Osage tribe. That's why we're down here in Pahuska, Oklahoma. And his family, they were also restaurateurs back in the 80s. They had little, restaurants and things like that. Ben took that idea, and when he graduated college, he started, the first Native American fast casual restaurant in Denver, which sounds like cool, great. You can't really serve native cuisine without native ingredients. And so, as part of that, the supply chain had to develop. So, it was a lot of, you know, having meetings, finding those native ingredients, talking to farmers and ranchers that were just barely, kind of doing this for themselves and trying to
Hmm.
build that supply chain so it could service the restaurant. Um, and I ended up meeting the guys on a collaboration project with the University of Colorado. I was on a panel just talking about kind of bringing those food items to people outside of the immediate community. So like that small neighborhood in Denver. And I fell in love with it. It's exactly what we should be doing. We're looking at growing supply chains that are here, that are inside, the US, don't import anything. Um, and then trying to bring those supply chains along with business trajectory. So my job, one of my jobs, is to understand the business direction and then figure out how to support that all the way down to the grower producer level. So we work with, farmers, we work with ranchers to try to figure out what they need to grow along with us. And so it's a lot different than, putting an RFP out at a bigger company where you're like, hey, I need to buy beans. You want to sell me beans? This is what I need, because we're like, we would
Right.
actually go to the farmer and say, okay, we want to use these beans. Um, First of all, how much do the beans cost? How much do you need to make off of these beans to maintain and grow your business, right? And then we're saying, okay, let's look at your capacity. Let's look at all of these things because we're growing a business here that, hopefully is around for multiple generations. And if we don't support all of the folks that are supporting us, there's a big gap there. We're going to run out.
Right.
So every decision we make has all of these other considerations
I
along with it.
I I love it. And is this something that you'd be looking to scale across states, across the country?
Yeah, so we've opened up nationwide on our online store. The biggest challenge for us scaling has just been to make sure that we scale responsibly. The last thing that we want to do is we don't want to take these ingredients away from the communities that use them traditionally and as part of their, food source.
Hmm.
Um, and so our scaling looks like, it looks different for each category that we're in, especially with bison. Bison's a big deal, especially right now where there's a lot of competition in the market for bison.
Wow.
We want to grow our herds responsibly. We want to make sure that we're not forcing the herds to do things that they don't, need to do for the health of the herd. We want to make sure that we're taking care of the individual animals in the herd. But also we want to supply bison as the demand grows. We want to be a player in that space. So,
I
um,
keep thinking of the Western movies I watched as a kid.
yeah, it's just like that. Our herd that we partner with up in South Dakota, they're on 1 million acres of land, and you have to you can't really get close to them. They're wild animals, so they run away. So you have to really be strategic on how you harvest them. We try to use whole carcass utilization as much as possible. So everything, tip to tail, we say. So we find outlets for that stuff.
What do you do with the vegans? Do you help them in any way too?
We have great vegan food. Yeah. We specialize in temporary beans, which is a really cool ingredient. Comes out of the American Southwest. It's super drought resistant, loaded with fiber, protein, calcium. So we have and it's all here, which is really cool, especially being someone who's been in food and food globally, being able to come home and realize that you have access to all of these neat ingredients just right here.
Yeah, it's spectacular. So somebody like me in California couldn't, or could we order it now?
Yep, you can order it now.
And where do we go online to do it?
Shoptokabe.com.
Oh, that was difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the consumer facing piece of this. The biggest initiative that we're finding a lot of success with is in our fully prepared meals. So we're a couple rounds into some food as medicine studies.
Hmm.
So we're actually partnering with tribal communities, understanding what medical needs they have, and tailoring meals using their ingredients. So we would, for example, we would purchase ingredients from that tribal community. We would work with chefs, dietitians within that community to create meals. We package them in fully prepared frozen formats and distribute those to those folks to treat medical conditions. Um, so it works in a number, and we're the third round down, and you'll probably hear more as we stay in contact. But we're on the third round of a couple of medical studies down there that are showing really high promise, just with weight loss, diabetes, heart failure, and all we're doing is replacing meals twice a day with things that they want to eat, and it's a pretty big deal. You are what you eat.
Yeah, you
So
are what you eat, and food is medicine for real.
mhm.
And then again, Mother Nature knows exactly what it's got and what it's doing. So
Yeah,
no, it's brilliant, and I love that you're doing that, and it's the right time, right place because people are, especially younger people, are looking, not only looking, they're demanding, they're being more selective as to what they want to eat and everything like that. So, well, I'm gonna have one more question for you because in LA, we say you got to keep them wanting more so you can do a sequel. Um,
nice.
so, but my last question is, a client told me in 2021, he said that to me about 2020 in the pandemic year. He said, it was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, for real. And now we're 2025, and I know so many people that feel that COVID was both yesterday and years ago, all at the same time. It's all like mishmash all over the place. And like I said, we're in 2025 already. And with all that's happened between that and AI and everything going on, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
Yeah. Um, with all of those things, I'm grateful that I've had the ability to follow my heart in a lot of ways, to do these things, and to be able to say, okay, I can choose to go in this direction. And honestly, there's been a lot of luck. Let's just call it what it is, to just keep, moving in that direction. What I'm probably the most hopeful for is that we as a society are going to see that nutrition and nurturing comes, it is a lot easier than we make it out to be, and it's not just what you put in your mouth, it's what you put in your mind, and having all of these things together. So and doing good things is going to generally be good. So as long as I keep trying to do the best I can do, and hope for the best. So
No, well said. Well, I'm grateful that I have a new friend. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
That's always cool. And I still wish I had your hair. I used to.
So the hair is a funny story. I don't know if you have time for it or not, but
Go for
usually I
it.
keep my hair pretty close. I grew it out for my sister recently got married. I started growing my hair as soon as I found out that they were engaged. Just because every family member that gets married, I try to have a different look for the wedding, so that when you look back at all the wedding photos that I'm in, I have a different look, and so it just kind of keeps mixing it up. But I made it through the wedding and I made it through the summer. So now I'm growing it to see how long I can get it before I donate it. So
Oh, very cool.
yep.
I'll count me in on the auction. Um,
Yeah. Thanks.
no, that's great. That's a great way to discern between the weddings, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The hair, pretty cool. And but I'm also grateful that you are, like you said, you did follow your heart. And I don't necessarily believe in luck. I kind of believe that because of certain paths, you take other things happen, and then you capitalize on the opportunity at the same time because. Luck and prayers and all that are all great, but you still have to act when those things are happening.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I'm hopeful for a lot of the same stuff that you are a leader who cares that's going the right direction for all of us. So thanks for that. Thanks for being that, and thanks for being on the series.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, this was fun.
And I'm glad the lights stayed on until the end.
Yeah, right.